Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So this is part 2 of the server build and I really need some help. Okay, so let's begin with the parts of the server as I haven't covered that yet. So starting with the case, this is a Dell Power Edge case. This is a 4U case, so that's the height 4U. And the reason why I chose this one is because I can fit a normal ATX power supply in it. Talking about the power supply, it is a gigabyte, let me just see this specific wattage, it's 585 watts. And yeah, I actually modded this, so as you can see here, it originally only had two 4 pins for the CPU, and then I just modded on these two as well. And so yeah, that's what I did with this power supply. And then I custom built this case. As you can see from the first part of this video, I made the internal motherboard tray and all that. So with that covered, for the graphics card, now this isn't really necessary, but I just had a GTX 1060, the 6 gig model. This is a Strix one. I had this one because this was actually my first PC that I built. So yeah, I have this one. I'm just gonna put it in here to use. And then for RAM, I have 4 8 gig sticks. Now this is ECC memory, and it runs at 1600 megahertz as far as I can tell. There's actually no specification on here to what the speeds are, but according to the BIOS and Windows, it is 1600 megahertz. And I've got 4 sticks of that for a total of 32 gigs. And then we have the motherboard. So this is the Asus KGPE-D16. So this motherboard has 16 RAM slots, and it actually uses an older AMD architecture. So the CPUs in here is actually Opteron CPUs. Now you might notice that there is 2 sockets for, and that is where my problems start. So originally I only had one CPU, and that was the Opteron G128. So that's only an 8-core CPU, 8 cores, 8 threads, and 2 GHz. So nothing special. It isn't really that fast. It gets the job done, but yeah, it isn't really that fast. And for what I'm building this server, I want to build kind of like a render farm site, which is where I can render my videos, and yeah, I just use it so I can to run my Minecraft server on, and maybe even a storage solution later on. But this is where the problems start. So I ordered 2 CPUs, and to read the specific model, this is the Opteron 6380. So this is actually what, according to AMD's website, it's supposed to be a 16-core, 16-thread CPU with a base clock of 2.5 gigahertz and then a boost of 3.5. But yeah, according to the BIOS on this board, it is 16 cores, but when I booted into Windows, it recorded it as 8 cores and 16 threads. And yeah, I really don't know what's the issue there. I couldn't figure that one out. So maybe I'm just stupid, I'm looking over something, or yeah, there's something weird going on. And that brings us to the second and bit more fatal problem. Well, the first, the core count and threads, that doesn't really bother me. It performs really good, but that's where the second part comes in. So this motherboard, I bought this late last year, so that was, it was around September of 2020. I bought this second hand from a guy, and he booted it up for me, and it worked perfectly, and the motherboard still works perfectly. But back then I did check the second socket if there were any bent pins or broken pins or anything like that, and At the time, I didn't see any, and I didn't look too closely. I just looked in it, and the socket looked perfect to me. It wasn't covered. I did notice that, but there was no damage to the socket that I could see. But I have to say, it was quite dark in the room that I saw it. And then I took the motherboard home, or I bought the motherboard and I took it home, and I immediately just put a piece of cardboard inside. It wasn't touching the pins, and then just closed the socket. But the piece of, I'm saying cardboard, was more like just a piece of thick paper, and that covered the socket. And literally I left it like that all the way until now. So I think today's date is the 25th of January or something, or somewhere around there. But I basically got this yesterday. Yesterday was Monday, and I got the two CPUs, the two Opteron 6380s, and I tested both of them individually first, and both of them worked 100% fine. The Cinebench scores for the two of them was actually like 1 point difference, and I ran it repeatedly, and it literally gave me the same result every time. And then I said, oh, okay, I don't have a cooler yet for the second socket or for the second CPU, but I have a heatsink that is about the same size and will fit on here, and then I'll just make a pressure mount for it. I'm comfortable with doing that. So I installed the second CPU in the second slot, and I wanted to turn the motherboard on and press the power button. And normally what this motherboard do is when you push the button, it would like start up and then power off immediately, like just after a second, and then like after a second of being off again, then it would start up. And that is the normal like boot sequence for this motherboard. However, when I installed the second CPU and hit the power button, it powered on and it stayed on, and the fans were spinning at 100% speed all the time. Now I left this, I thought, okay, maybe the second CPU is just doing something weird, so I just left it. Nothing happened. So then I was like, okay, well, in the BIOS you can disable the second CPU, and that is what I did, because that gave me problems if I only ran one CPU. So I took the second CPU out again, went into the BIOS with only one CPU, the first CPU in. I enabled the second CPU again, I installed the second CPU, and the same problem. I thought, okay, well, maybe it's the memory. I literally did every possible configuration of memory on this board. There is 16 slots, and I tried every single combination. I tried all of them. Some of them I tried multiple times. Yes, I did go to the manual and to see in which slots I have to put it in. I did that. I read through the whole thing. It's like 100 and something pages, and I read for something if there's any clue as why it's doing this. And then I opened the socket and I saw, well, there are 4 damaged pins, 2 of which are just the tip is just bent. Now the CPU pins look something like this. It comes up like at an angle, and then at the top it has like a flat piece where the CPU makes contact. So when you put the CPU in, it actually presses this down. So this top part was actually bent backwards. So I was able to bend them more or less into their correct position with just the needle. It took me quite some time, but I did manage to not break them off and bend them to the correct side again. So I believe they're working fine, because I lined them up with the other pins. But then there are 2 more pins that was damaged, and these weren't just bent. Like the tips of the pin was completely gone. It was 2 of them next to each other. So I don't know what happened there. It was definitely not me that broke it off, because since I got this board, I covered it up, and it stayed like that for months until now that I wanted to use it. So that is where my problem is now. I did everything I could, and I cannot get this board to boot with the second CPU in. and it is the second CPU. I've tried another power supply to see maybe the 8-pin power that I supplied to it, maybe that was the problem, or that I modded on, maybe that was the problem. It is not. This CPU, or not, and the CPU is working because I tested both of these CPUs individually and they do work. But for some reason, this second slot doesn't want to work, because I think those 2 pins are really important pins. So yeah, now it doesn't work. I was really hoping that those 2 pins are maybe just like connected to a DIMM slot. So losing one DIMM slot is fine for me. I wasn't planning in any way to kit out this board with like the maximum amount of RAM. So losing one slot or even 2 slots, that would have been fine for me. I just wanted the CPU. I more want the CPU horsepower than I want the RAM capabilities. So yeah, I really need your help, guys, and if you know of someone that can fix this in South Africa, preferably, because if I have to send this board out of South Africa, and this just the taxes on the taxes and the shipping and the delay, and with the pandemic going on, that would just take forever. So if you know of someone that is able to fix CPU sockets, even if they can just maybe like solder on a little bit and I can put the CPU in and keep it in. I'm not planning to take the CPU out all the time. Literally, it's in, it's gonna stay in. So if you know of anyone that might be able to help me, could you please just down in the comments, just let me know. And yeah, so for the time being, this project is just gonna be, I'm gonna just put the motherboard back in so that it's just safe. But yeah, I'm not gonna be, I don't think I'm gonna be using it, to be honest. It's just gonna be sitting collecting dust, and that is also why this project has been taking so long. I think the first video I released like a month ago, and the second part is only coming out now because I was waiting on the CPUs, and now I got the CPUs, but now the board is broken, and I really didn't notice that. I only noticed this now. So yeah, guys, that's where this project is going to be just on pause for the moment. I really do want to finish this project because I think it's going to be insane with 32 gigs, and if all of them are and if I get the second CPU working, it's going to be 32 cores as well. So I think this will be literally a beast of a PC, even if it's older, but that's only if I can get it working. So I also contacted a few people to see if someone might be able to help me, but yeah, I think I have better luck on YouTube with all the viewers. So please, if you know anyone that might be able to help me, leave it in the comments down below. And yeah, thank you for watching, guys, and I hope to see you soon next time. Goodbye.